Hello and welcome to this, the first machine out of the big stack of water damaged machines that you might have seen in the last video that I acquired for free in a local advert. There were a lot of them. They all had some kind of water damage to different degrees because they'd been stored in a shed that had been leaking for 4 years. This is the machine that made me actually go for it because it's a Time machine, which is a brand that I remember seeing in all of the mags back in the mid-90s, so I was pleased to get one of these and hopefully it'll work. So we'll get the lid off. You can see there's a bit of rust on the outside of the case, and yeah, you might already be able to see along the bottom edge of the frame there, it's been sitting in what looks like a puddle of sulfuric acid from the amount of crap that's on there, but we'll see if we can clean it up. So I went online looking for information about this particular model. The model number was printed on the back, and there's not much information about Time computers at all, which is weird considering they were pretty big here in the UK. There was a time in the mid to late 90s where you couldn't buy a computer magazine without there being a big multi-page spread of adverts for them. They had a chain of stores that you could go and visit in your local shopping mall, and lots of people I knew had Time computers, Time machines as they were known in some of the adverts. So yeah, a bit surprising that I couldn't find anything. I did find this promotional video, which is a long thing, about 20 minutes long, and yeah, that was about it. So Time were owned by a sort of umbrella company called Granville Technology Group, and they were responsible for some of the other big names that you would also see in computer magazines about that time. They had a brand called Tiny, a brand called Colossus, and a brand called MJN, which I was familiar with from those same magazines. I do have a Tiny machine somewhere as well. It's pleasing to see in this promotional video that the machine they demonstrate is actually the exact same model, the exact same case as the one I've got, so at least it was nice to see that it did exist somewhere, but it didn't give me any clues as to what the processor and specs might have been. So it's a bit of a shame that I couldn't find any more detail on it, but I'm going to assume that everything that's in the box is the original stuff. As I said earlier, this is one of the less water damaged machines, but you can still see it's been sitting in a puddle or something, and there's a fair amount of rust along the bottom, so we're going to try and clean that up. A bit dirty on the inside at the bottom, but nothing rusty, I don't think. And apart from that, it looks pretty clean in there, so I've got high hopes that this one's going to work. The worst bit of rust on the machine is this bit around the back below the expansion slots. This is pretty meaty, crappy stuff, so we're going to have to probably get in there with some kind of power tool and scrape it off, and then see if we can do some protection on it as well. Getting onto the internals, I could see straight away that this is a kind of budget machine. There was a couple of cards in there. We've got a network card and a modem, nothing else, so nothing exciting like graphics or anything. It's all on board on this machine, and yeah, it looks like a budget model of whatever it is, so nothing terribly exciting. The motherboard on this one's pretty inaccessible. It's right underneath the PSU there, difficult to get your fingers in. Get the PSU out first, so it looks like this has escaped too much damage. There's a tiny little bit of corrosion on the front edge, but I'll probably open it up and check the caps and make sure there's nothing nasty going on inside. Then we can get the motherboard out. So it's micro ATX, and it looks like this motherboard tray is just a micro ATX tray. It doesn't have any sort of other places to place the posts, so it's going to be micro ATX on nothing. I'm going to have to get the front bezel off this machine because we're going to be taking power tools to get into some of those corners where the corrosion is, and also the plastic could probably do with a damn good scrub, so it'd be better to do that separately. So you can see the rest of the case, looking at the underside of the motherboard tray, is pretty clean. The corrosion is all around the bottom, so it almost looks like this thing's been sat in like a pool of water, maybe about half an inch deep, for only God knows how long. So that's pretty much it. Everything's out. The rest of the interior, the top bit, is certainly clean enough. So I think what we'll do is we'll sort the case out first, try and get rid of some of that rust, and then we'll take a look at the internals and see what we've got. So I'm just going to give this whole thing a little bit of a buzz with a grinding tool, just to get the bulk of the loose rust off these bottom edges. I'm not going to go too far with this one. In the past I have taken it all right back to the bare metal and painted the whole thing silver again. What I'm going to do here is just take the rust off, and then I'm going to use some rust inhibitor just to paint onto it. That kind of stuff that just turns the rust black so that it doesn't go rusty any more than it already is. And for that, I'm going to use some of this crust stuff from Hammerite. Other brands are available, and just paint it on. And I've used this in the past. It does a pretty good job. It looks a bit ugly. It turns the metal black where there was rust. I can live with that because everything's going to be inside the case. I might give it a little brush of silver just to kind of make it look a little bit better later on. So that's pretty much it done. It didn't really take very long with this case at all. I'm not quite sure if I'm totally happy with it. I might revisit this case at some point and do a proper job on it. It's only the base that needs sorting out, to actually take those stickers off, strip it down, give it a proper prime and a coat of silver. In the meantime, I can live with this because it's mostly going to be hidden when the case is back together again. You'll only see the actual outer case and the front bezel, so you won't see any of this. For the plastics, in this case, I'm going to use a bit of this. This is my kitchen scouring cream. It's a mild scourer cream kind. Not quite as abrasive as some others, so I'm just going to give the whole thing a light rub with this, and hopefully that will bring up the filth. That came up looking pretty nice. The added bonus of using kitchen creams like that is your PC also smells of lemons at the end of the procedure. Yeah, you can see that's come up looking pretty damn brand new, to be honest. It's done a really good job. I might use that in future. It's the first time I've used that kind of scouring cream. I used it on this part of the case as well. There was some kind of rusty stuff on here, but it was just surface stuff, more or less, like water leaked on top of it, so it wasn't sort of impregnated into the metal. And then, as I said, I took the PSU apart. Everything looked pretty clean inside. I just gave it a dust. The caps look okay, and yeah, that looked good to go. Just because it's clean doesn't mean it works, so we'll plug in the power supply tester, turn it on, and see what lights we get. And we've got everything that you'd expect, apart from the negative 5 volts, which you wouldn't get on this PSU anyway. So it looks like this survived the leak, and I've got a working power supply out of this. So bear in mind that all of these PCs, I think there are about 13 of them. If none of them work, at least I've got one working power supply, and since they were free, that's all in the green. So I did notice when I was inside the machine that somebody had clearly been in there before, so I don't know if the components are original or whether it's been upgraded or anything really, because I couldn't find any information on the net. So there's a Samsung floppy drive, but then when it came to the optical drive, that was from Compaq, so clearly this isn't the one that came with the machine originally, and there have been some repairs and upgrades going on. And the motherboard's an interesting one, so it's socket 7 stroke super socket 7. I say that there is a caveat here because you'll notice there's no AGP port, but this board does support the 100 MHz frontside bus and 100 MHz RAM, so it is kind of super socket 7, and it does have AGP because you can see in the middle there's a Rage 3D chip on board, and that runs on the AGP bus, so it is kind of super socket 7 with limited options for your AGP usage. A cool little board from MSI. It's an MS5182 and it runs on the ALI Aladdin 5 chipset. So it's an interesting board. I do have another one of these somewhere that I've never really looked at, that I don't think works properly. So we can see the ALI chipset, the Rage 3D onboard graphics, and below that we've got 512 kilobytes of onboard level 2 cache. It looks like a really nice, neat little thing. I've not seen, apart from in these formats, Super Socket 7 in micro ATX form. I think they probably all came without the AGP slot just because they're so much smaller. All of my other Super Socket 7 boards I've seen tend to be baby AT. So here we can see the MSI branding. So Time had a big kind of factory and they made PCs for all sorts of other people. So I think they got their start putting together PCs for the likes of IBM and other OEMs. But I don't know what they do on their own machines. Do they just use parts off the shelf, or do they customize them in any way, as so many people did, like hack the boards down, cost reduce them and that kind of thing? Or is this just a genuine MSI board, you know, no branding or anything for Time? We'll find out in a minute. So if we go around to the back and have a look at the I/O nothing exciting going on here, except we've got onboard sound, which we'll get to in a second. It's not the greatest, but we've just got our mouse, keyboard, to USB, serial, parallel, and VGA, and there's the sound, which is, it's a Creative Ensoniq chip, so it means it's not going to be great for DOS gaming because it's going to be running all of its FM in software emulation. So all that's left to do now is put the thing back together, and we'll turn it on and see what happens. CPU goes back in, so as I said, the Super Socket 7, the thing that came with it is a k6-2 550, notable for being the fastest k6-2, I think. Don't have one of these in my collection, so I'm pleased to have that. I hope that works. At the very least, if I get another processor out of it, I'll be happy. The guy I got this stuff off was a software engineer, so he had a lot of sensitive company stuff on all of his hard drives, so he took every single one out. So we're just going to use this 1.6 gig drive. So, god damn it, the CD drive was flashing permanently, which means it has some kind of issue. It wasn't trying to read, and yeah, we're looking at that screen and it's supposed to be showing me some kind of post and nothing's happening. So yeah, nothing happened at all when I booted this thing, and being me, I put it all back in the case before trying it instead of leaving it out. So yeah, I'm going to have to strip some stuff down again. So I got it all out and put the postcard on it. The postcard showed nothing. I was getting no beeps. The postcard just had 3 dashes and no changes. So yeah, it's clearly broken, unfortunately. I did notice that none of the fan headers were receiving any kind of power, so it perhaps indicates there's some kind of problem on the power side of things. The board is super clean, so it might be redeemable with a bit of tracing and tracking, but I'm not going to be doing that right now, otherwise this video would probably not come out for about 3 or 4 weeks, so I'm going to look for some alternatives. So as I said, I did have another similar board, and this is it. So it's a very similar looking thing, except it doesn't have the ISA slot. It has 3 PCI, and this one is from MyTac. It's 5114VU, except I do know that this one is a compact branded model. Now, having compact come up on a flash screen on a Time PC is not going to sit well with me. I wouldn't be able to live with that. At the very least, I don't want to have any other companies' branding on this thing if I do have to put another motherboard in it. But this one's so similar, just to get it up and running, we'll see how it goes. So this one booted up okay, but I did run into some issues straight away. I haven't really used this board for anything before. It booted and it wouldn't register any of the BIOS settings correctly, so I put a new battery in it, but it still didn't seem to remember what it had on board. It wouldn't boot from a floppy disk, which is going to cause me problems because I want to load Windows 98 on this, and the branding, as you see here, would have bugged me anyway. So yeah, that was a no-go. I tried for hours to get this thing working, and literally it would seem stable for a few minutes, and then suddenly it would just stop booting from the floppy drive and not recognize the floppy drive at all, and then it wouldn't access the hard drive and didn't recognize the hard drive was there at all. And to be honest, I just couldn't be bothered to go on with this anymore. So I think the AMD K6 550 is going to be out, and I'm going to have to look for something else, which is a damn shame really. The only other board I had that might fit is this one from Gigabyte. It's a K6-2 It runs on the Intel 810 chipset. So it's socket 370, which means we're not going to be able to use the K6-2, which is a bit of a shame, though I've got plenty of baby AT boards I can experiment with that on. I do hope to try and troubleshoot and get the original board for this working at some point. If it's a power relate thing, I'll just trace through it carefully, look at the transistors and stuff like that. Don't really know much about that kind of thing, so this is the perfect opportunity to learn. So this board has a chipset from Intel, as I said before, which means it's got AC97 audio, nothing exciting there, and it's got Intel onboard graphics, Intel 810, so probably a shittier spec for sound and video, but I'll just be pleased if I can get it working. So the board is a nice fit, fits the I/O panel again, being micro ATX. I tried a few different chips on this because theoretically it should go up to a bus speed of 133, so I tried a couple of 133 Pentium 3s, and it didn't like that one little bit. So I had a couple of 100 megahertz frontside bus chips, a 933 Pentium 3 and a 500 Celeron. So what I decided to go with in the end was the 500 Celeron, because this is an early one, a Mendocino, and it would probably be in contemporary with the k6-2. This came out slightly later, I think in 2000, I think it might have been, I may be wrong there, and the k6-2 would have been 1999. So you can imagine Time might have put a machine out with this chip at the same time, in the same sort of market area for a budget model. So I feel that this is a fairly contemporary machine, and I don't feel too bad about this instead of the k6-2, probably similar performance too. Of course, as I said, this is a Packard Bell board, and I'm going to have the same issue as I had with the Compact. I'm going to see an ugly Packard Bell logo. Well, not ugly for a Packard Bell machine, but ugly for a Time machine. So I'm not going to be able to live with this for very long. So I'll either have to get that other board working or find another generic board that doesn't push another manufacturer's logo in my face every time I fire this machine up. And if I can get it working with either, you know, something like this or hopefully the k6-2 again, I'll be happy with that, to say that this Time machine is roughly what it should have been back in the day. So the machine's back together with the Mendocino 500 Celeron. I put the original stick of RAM back in, so it's got 128 megs of RAM. That was the RAM that came with the original K6 motherboard, and yeah, I think we're good to go and actually install some stuff. So it booted, it posted, it let me in, I went to the BIOS, I set the time up, and it recognised my floppy drives and everything. So I think we're in a good place to actually install something. And of course, on a reboot, you see the thing that is going to bug me, that means I'm not going to be able to live with this for long. When you boot back into it, you get a Packard Bell logo. So yeah, I definitely need another motherboard at some point. So I'm a bit disappointed in this first machine, this first restore from that big pile of stuff, that this one of all of them I would have liked to have worked perfectly. Well, having said that, initially I thought that this one was the one I wanted to get working perfectly, but there are some better machines in that big pile that I'm now hoping work as well. So everything's cool. Now there are some Time restore discs for Time computers on archive.org. I'm not going to go there right now. I think we'll definitely be revisiting this machine at some point to try and get it a bit more original, and at that point we'll try and restore it with some Time software. So in the meantime, we're just going to get going and load Windows 98. Had to deal with that broken optical drive as well at this point, so I'd installed off one of my black CD-ROMs, of which I have many. So what I decided it was finally time to do was remove the black bezels of some of those things, because I don't have many black machines, and take some of the beige bezels off some of the broken ones and turn these black ones into beige ones, which I might have to go through and do that with all of them, because to be honest, I don't think I've got much use for about the 10 black optical drives I've got, when I only need a couple. So now finally I can put the machine back together and put the cover back on, and hopefully that'll be it. So it'll be not the Time computer I was hoping to come out of this little exercise, but at least it'll be something that works, and I can put it away in a cupboard and continue and fix some of the other ones. And there it is. And it is quite a smart looking little setup, I think. You know, if it wasn't for the Packard Bell logo, I think I could probably have just lived with this as a machine that would have probably been sold by Time at the same time as the k6-2, for those who prefer to go the budget Intel route. But yeah, I can't live with it with that Packard Bell thing. I can't get the chip off because it's soldered to the board. Well, I could, but I'm not going to bother to try and maybe remove that by hacking the BIOS. But yeah, it's a shame. Need to sort out the motherboard. I think I'm going to come back and revisit this machine at some point and try and get it a bit more close to its original state. Now it's just a case of getting some drivers on, so really super simple with the Intel 810. You've just got to load the chipset drivers and the graphics driver, and you're pretty much good to go. And of course the AC97 driver for the sound. So that's pretty much it. It didn't quite go as I wanted it to go. I was hoping of all the machines that this one would just work because it was so clean inside. And I've always wanted a time computer in my collection because, as I said, they bring back a lot of memories. Even though I never owned one back in the day, they were everywhere. You used to walk past the shops in the shopping centre, used to see them every time you opened a magazine, and a lot of people I know bought them because they were kind of go-to company for family PCs. They had a terrible reputation for reliability, which might well be why this one doesn't work, but at least I've got a working machine out of it, though not one that I can live with because I don't want that Packard Bell logo plastered across my screen when I boot up this Time PC. I want to either see Time or I want to see just a generic post, so we're going to be coming back to this at some point. I'm probably going to strip the frame down totally. In hindsight, I wish I'd done that now and respray it silver, get the whole thing looking nice, and then we'll either try and fix that old motherboard. That might be a video to try and practice my meager problem tracking skills, or find another replacement board that is generic, that just has a normal post with nobody else's logo on it. But in the meantime, at least I do have a working system. It's a contemporary system, being the Celeron 500. It's something that Time would probably have sold in parallel to the k6-2, so not the end of the world, but not quite the result that I wanted. If you'd watched the last video, you'll know that there's some much more exciting machines in that pile, so while I went and got that big pile of stuff because of this machine, this is the one that caught my eye. There are some much more exciting things in there. Hopefully we'll have better results with those. So that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed watching it, and I hope you'll join me as we continue to try and fix up some of that rusty old crappy machine stuff. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.